Welcome back to the Gentrics Multiverse podcast.
So glad to be back.
Yeah. And imagine this for a second, right? You win the absolute hardest physical battle of your entire life. You push your body past every conceivable limit. You finally collapse across that finish line in total victory. And, they hand you your trophy.
Right, the moment of triumph.
Exactly. But then, as you're, catching your breath, you look down at that trophy and you realize it's actually a bomb.
Oh, man.
It's already ticking. So today, we're looking at the exact moment where survival stops being a reward and, starts being a punishment.
It just completely shatters the illusion of safety, doesn't it? I mean, we are so conditioned by, traditional hero narratives to view survival as this binary state.
Yeah, totally.
Like you were in a burning building, you escaped the burning building, so you are now safe. But when the environment itself is the arbiter of your worth, crossing a physical threshold doesn't mean you've won. It just means you've proven you're finally durable enough to endure the psychological punishment that comes next.
And that psychological punishment is exactly where we find ourselves today. So welcome back to you, our listener, to the continuing read-through.
We're thrilled to have you at the table with us.
Absolutely, because we are entering a phase of the source material that demands a complete reevaluation of, everything we thought we knew about this universe. We are looking strictly at Part 3 of The Elementalist. No jumping ahead, no looking into the next book, just the chapters Flames of Judgment, Desolation or Death, Trial of Deception, Flame of Nullity, and the Krankite Abyss.
And before we step into that absolute gauntlet, let's ensure we're fully grounded in the narrative momentum we built in Part 2, because the rules of the Elemental Arch changed so dramatically in the Maznia Desert and the Magma Maze.
They really did. Let's unpack those shifting rules.
Yeah.
Because the first crucial beat from our last deep dive was our protagonist, Zeryl Homrasul, securing the dark half of the fire relic.
Right.
And what blew my mind, honestly, was the methodology. He didn't slay the massive guardian worm in the Maznia Desert.
No, not at all.
He didn't use brute force. He utilized pure, vulnerable diplomacy. He literally bowed to an apex predator.
Which fundamentally reframed his relationship with the planetary ecosystem of Eilbria.
Yeah, exactly.
He demonstrated a submission to the natural hierarchy rather than a desire to conquer it. And because he offered that respect, the guardian worm offered him this profound paradigm-shifting truth. The revelation that light corrupts and darkness cleanses.
The great inversion. I am still reeling from that. We spent the entire first part of the book assuming light was inherently good and pure.
Right, the standard fantasy trope.
But the worm essentially told him that radiance, without a tether, is this destructive, mutating force. Which leads directly into the second massive takeaway from Part 2, which is the unidentified parasitic void weapon bonded to his arm.
The weapon that, until the Magma Maze, had been entirely dormant. Or, merely a source of passive dread.
Yeah, but in the inescapable, suffocating heat of the maze, it finally activated to protect him. And it didn't just project a physical wall to block the lava. Right?
Yeah.
If we look at the mechanics of what actually happened, it acted as a localized thermodynamic shield.
Yes.
It consumed the ambient heat to preserve his life.
I want to pause on that mechanism for a second because it's so critical for what happens today. It wasn't reflecting the heat, it was nullifying it.
Right.
The void energy created a vacuum that basically devoured the thermal energy. It acted on its own volition, seemingly fueled by the immense unresolved trauma Zeryl Homrasul has been carrying since the Cala Blaze. It proved that his psychological scars have a tangible physical weight in the elemental architecture of this world.
He used his grief as a heatsink.
Exactly.
And it worked.
Yeah.
He made it out of the maze. He survived, which perfectly sets up our mission for this deep dive. Over the next hour, we are exploring a singular, terrifying question. What happens when physical survival is no longer enough, and a protagonist is forced to confront the literal manifestation of their own corrupted future?
Because the transition from Part 2 to Part 3 executes one of the most brutal environmental rug pulls I have ever read. The narrative promises relief, and then just immediately weaponizes that relief against the reader and the protagonist.
So let's get right into the text. Part 3 opens in the immediate aftermath of the Magma Maze. Zeryl Homrasul bursts through those heavy exit doors. He is gasping for cool air. He looks down at the back of his left hand, and the coveted fire insignia has permanently burned itself into his skin.
Right. He thinks the trial of Asnium is over.
He believes he is holding the trophy.
the trophy is ticking.
Yeah, it is. Almost immediately, the fire insignia begins to glow, and the text goes out of its way to describe the sensory horror of this. It doesn't just feel like a warm brand. It produces a heat that feels like his hand is actively on fire, burning from the inside out, even though his actual flesh remains completely intact.
Wow.
Is this excruciating, internalized phantom agony?
That internal burning is the first signal that the parameters of the test have shifted, from the thermodynamic to the spiritual. It is an invasion of his internal biology.
And as he's clutching his hand in agony, the ominous voice returns. But it isn't the village chief of Zaswaya. It isn't a human judge telling him he passed. It is the Cartier volcano itself.
The literal geological formation speaks.
The literal mountain speaks directly to his mind. It tells him that gaining the insignia is completely meaningless unless he learns to actually harness its power. And if he fails, he will be swallowed forever by the, quote, flames of judgment.
The environment itself is revoking his victory condition.
And it gets so much worse. As the mountain is speaking, Zeryl Homrasul looks around and realizes a horrifying spatial truth. He isn't standing outside the volcano, breathing the cool air of Azneum.
No, he's not.
He is still sealed entirely inside the cavern, and a massive pool of magma is rapidly rising right below the precarious ledge he's standing on.
And here is where we see the immediate systemic failure of his previous survival mechanism. Because in the Magma Maze, when the heat peaked, the void weapon, that dark aura on his arm, activated and saved him.
Right.
So logically, as the magma rises toward his ledge, his first instinct is to try and trigger that dark shield again.
He tries to flex that trauma muscle, but it completely fails. The void weapon does absolutely nothing. It is entirely dormant. He is left completely unprotected, relying solely on a human body that has already been pushed way past the brink of exhaustion. So he panics.
Understandably.
Yeah. He starts trying to free climb the sheer, superheated walls of the cavern to stay above the rising lava.
It's a desperate regression to purely physical exertion. He thinks he can just outclimb the element.
He makes it about halfway up, his hands literally blistering on the rocks. But the volcano isn't just going to let him climb out. The mountain violently shakes, causing a total disorder of falling, flaming rocks. He's battered, he's knocked completely off the cavern wall, and he falls all the way back down to the ledge where he started.
And the lava is inches away.
Inches. The environment is actively, violently rejecting his attempts to conquer it. And then the volcano begins to taunt him. It questions his fundamental resolve.
But I want to examine the specific accusation the volcano hurls at his mind here. It tells him that he is full of contradiction and that his, quote, deceit shall not go unpunished.
See, I have to push back on that accusation from the mountain, though. I remember reading that line and stopping cold. Is Zeryl Homrasul actually being deceitful? Let's look at his track record.
Okay, let's look at it.
He was radically, dangerously honest with the guardian worm in the desert. He bowed. He admitted his complete lack of direction. He stated his intent to stop King Pucci Kuvarnis. He hasn't lied to a single entity since he entered Azneum. So what deceit is this rock formation sensing?
Well, you're assuming deceit requires a verbal lie to another person. But in the context of the elemental arts, deceit is about a lack of internal harmony. The mountain is accurately sensing the unresolved, conflicting trauma of that void weapon.
Wait, are you saying that relying on that dark shield in the Magma Maze was a form of elemental cheating?
Absolutely. Think about it. The first test in the maze was purely thermodynamic. It tested if his physical form could endure the environment. And he bypassed that test by using a completely foreign, nullifying energy, the void, to create a buffer.
Well, okay.
He didn't harmonize with the fire. He built a bunker to hide from it. So this second test, the rising magma, is entirely psychological. The volcano isn't testing his heat tolerance anymore. It knows he can cheat that. The volcano is testing his fundamental trust in the elemental forces themselves.
I mean, that is an impossible standard. It's like surviving a grueling marathon, crawling across the finish line, completely dehydrated, your muscles cramping, and the judges look at you and say, "Great warm-up, but we noticed you wore running shoes instead of going barefoot. So now, immediately begin a mandatory Ironman triathlon."
Right.
It is an absurd ask of the human psyche.
It is absurd if you view it through a human lens. But the elementals in Elibria demand complete surrender, not just endurance. The deceit is his reliance on building a wall against the fire, rather than respecting the ecosystem of the flame. He is using his trauma to shield himself from the world.
And as the lava is literally cresting the lip of the ledge about to consume his boots, he has this incredibly quiet internal moment. Up until now, whenever he was in danger, He relied on the survival advice of his grandparents.
Right, the practical stuff.
Yeah, remember back at the Oasis in Part 2. He survived the acid worm ambush because his grandmother taught him practical paranoid knowledge about reading the environment. But here, facing the rising magma, he accesses a distinct, direct memory of his mother.
The shift in maternal figures here is highly structural. I mean, his grandparents taught him how to survive a hostile world through suspicion, vigilance, and, physical readiness. But his mother's memory operates on a completely different axis.
She taught him how to interact with the foundational forces of the world through faith. In the memory, she tells him that he must trust the elementals themselves, that they will protect and guide him, but he has to believe in himself first.
Belief as a survival tool.
Exactly. And in this moment of absolute literal boiling pressure, with lava touching his skin, Zeryl Homrasul actually listens to her.
He stops fighting the mountain.
He completely stops. He drops his shoulders. He relaxes his battered body. He accepts his fate, live or die, and completely surrenders to the fire element. He drops the psychological shield.
And the mechanism of the test instantly responds to that surrender.
Yes. The very second his muscles relax, the Cartier volcano violently erupts, a massive cataclysmic explosion of magma and ash, and Gentrics executes a brilliant perspective shift here.
Oh, the cutaway.
The cutaway. We immediately cut away to the outside of the volcano. The tribe of Zosway, the Scorpione Ardente, and their chief are standing at a safe distance, watching this massive eruption paint the sky red. They presume he has been entirely incinerated. The chief sadly declares that the trial has been failed once again by an outsider.
It establishes the absolute perceived finality of the physical world. As far as the biological ecosystem of Azenaeum is concerned, his physical body has been destroyed in a geological event.
But there's this one incredible tiny detail tucked into the scene. The chief of Zosway holds on to just a sliver of hope, and he refuses to leave the viewing area.
Right. Why?
Because the guardian worm from the Maznia Desert hasn't returned yet. He knows the elemental ecosystem is still holding its breath.
The chief understands that the physical reality of the eruption is only half the story.
Which is true, because erupting from a volcano in the world of Elabria doesn't mean you escape the danger. Accepting his fate in the physical world violently carries Zeryl Homrasul's consciousness directly into a metaphysical one. Which brings us into the second major section of today's deep dive, the realm of the dead and the keeper's bargain.
And the text plays with the very real possibility that the surrender in the volcano actually killed him. I mean, the transition is incredibly disorienting.
Disorienting is the perfect word. His soul is abruptly, violently separated from his physical body. He wakes up with the sensation of falling down an endless dark hole. But when he finally blinks and his vision clears, he finds himself standing on something the text explicitly identifies as Black Earth.
The sensory details here are wild.
They really are. Gentrics describes it not just as dark dirt. It's described as a flaky, hard, fragile substance that is entirely void of nutrients. It's like standing on a landscape ravaged by nuclear fallout.
It is the complete antithesis of the vibrant, overly hostile biological ecosystems we've seen on the surface. Like, Azenaeum is incredibly dangerous, but it is bursting with thermodynamic life.
Right.
This Black Earth is desolate, it is static, it is a purgatorial landscape where nothing can grow.
And the sky above him isn't a sky at all. It's an azure darkness, illuminated only by 3 blood moons hanging in the void. He realizes his feet aren't actually touching the ground. He's floating just slightly above the flakes of earth. He tries to stand, but he has no physical traction. He literally floats backward and crashes into this massive glowing black azure scythe that is sticking out of the ground.
And that is when we meet one of the most structurally significant characters in the entire series, Laduto.
Laduto. The text introduces him as a reaper, and crucially, the keeper of the dark element.
And his initial reaction to Zeryl Homrasul is almost comedic in its annoyance.
It really is.
Laduto is just irritated that a living, floating soul is bouncing around his graveyard, knocking over his things. But that annoyance vanishes. The second Laduto looks closely at him. The Reaper's eyes lock onto the dormant weapon bonded to Zeryl Homrasul's arm, and he instantly recognizes it. He calls it the Weapon of Nothingness.
We have to pause here because this is a monumental shift in the lore. Up until this exact page in the book, the Void Weapon has been treated as a highly localized, mysterious parasite.
Yes, exactly.
It was just a quirk of his personal trauma, a strange, dark energy that fed on his grief and occasionally acted as a shield.
Right, it was basically just that weird, shadowy thing his parents left him before they died in the Calablaze.
Yeah, but by having Laduto name it, The void is being formally recognized by a cosmic authority. A divine or semi-divine keeper of the dark element is validating this weapon as a tangible systemic elemental force. It isn't just a parasite. It is a fundamental law of the universe that can be formally claimed, categorized, and mastered.
It completely elevates his power scaling. It's like carrying around a weird, heavy, antique key on your keychain for years, only to accidentally stumble into the basement of the Federal Reserve and realize your antique key operates the master vault for the global economy.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Suddenly, what you're holding has planetary implications. And Laduto doesn't just acknowledge the weapon, he leverages it to set the terms for a formal trial. Because Zeryl Homrasul is technically defiling the realm of the dead with a living soul, he has to earn his way out.
And the terms of the bargain are incredibly strict, right? They introduce a ticking clock tied directly to the cosmic architecture of the realm.
Yeah, Laduto lays it out very clearly. Zeryl Homrasul must defeat all challengers that spawn from the shadows of the Black Earth, and ultimately he must retrieve the Reaper's scythe from the very bottom of the Krankite abyss.
And he has exactly 4 months to complete this task. That time limit isn't arbitrary either. It is measured by the gradual alignment of those 3 blood moons hanging overhead.
And we must emphasize the absolute stakes of this wager. It is a winner-takes-all scenario where the currency is his existence.
If he wins, the payout is staggering. He earns his freedom to return his soul to his body. He earns the true, purified power of the fire weapon, which is the entire reason he entered the Cartier volcano in the first place.
Yeah.
And most shockingly, he earns the formal claim and mastery over the dark or void element.
If he fails...
Yes. If he loses, the penalty is total erasure. His soul is trapped in this static realm of the dead forever, and his physical body, which is currently sitting perfectly preserved back on the surface in the active volcano, will simply wither away into nothingness.
It's just wild.
I mean, the absolute insanity of this wager. It is literally like walking into a cosmic casino, putting your soul on the roulette table, and the dealer, who happens to be the Grim Reaper, looks at you and says, okay, if you win, you get the jackpot, the vault, and you own the casino. But if you lose, you retroactively cease to exist.
It forces him to bet his entire existence on his ability to harmonize with an element he barely understands.
But looking at the structural design of this universe, I need you to explain this to me. Why does earning the fire element require passing a trial in the realm of darkness?
That's a great question.
I mean, Zeryl Homrasul entered the Cartier volcano in Osne specifically to get a fire sword. Why does the elemental architecture of Alabria reroute his soul to Laduto, a creature of the dark, to finalize a fire transaction?
I think we have to go back to the great inversion the Guardian Worm warned him about. Light corrupts, darkness cleanses. Fire, by its very physical nature, is consumptive, it is radiant, it expands, it requires fuel, and it destroys indiscriminately if left unchecked.
Right.
To truly master fire without being corrupted by it, without becoming an egomaniacal tyrant consumed by a god complex, exactly like King Kuvarneses, one must possess an internal anchor of absolute cleansing darkness.
A heat sink.
Precisely. The trial of darkness isn't a detour. It is the mandatory psychological tempering required to safely wield the thermodynamic volatility of fire. The universe is forcing a balance. It is ensuring that before he is handed the power to burn the world, he understands the quiet, static permanence of the grave.
He can't handle the heat without first understanding the absolute absence of it. That makes terrifying sense.
It really does.
So, the terms are laid out, the stakes are set. Laduto vanishes into the shadows, and the narrative immediately drops us into a grueling, exhausting war of attrition. Which brings us to the third section of our deep dive, the mirror of corruption.
And we really need to emphasize the pacing here. This isn't a brief training montage that spans a few paragraphs. The text heavily emphasizes the agonizing, mind-numbing duration of this phase.
The flakes of black earth tear open, and endless hordes of shadow warriors begin rising from the rifts, and Zeryl Homrasul fights them. For a month.
An entire month.
An entire month of ceaseless, exhausting, terrifying combat. And we have to remember his loadout here. He doesn't have the fire sword yet. He lost his regular hunting knife back in the physical world. He is fighting these endless hordes using only crude, unrefined blasts of dark energy from his void weapon. And when he misses, or when he's too exhausted to fire, he is fighting them with his bare hands.
Let's unpack the mechanics of fighting with unrefined void energy. Because he hasn't mastered it, he isn't projecting a clean, efficient beam.
No.
He is essentially ripping chunks of localized vacuum out of his own aura and throwing them. It is incredibly inefficient, and it drains his spiritual stamina rapidly. Every blast is a massive caloric and emotional expenditure.
It has to be exhausting. I get cranky if I skip breakfast, and this kid is fighting shadow demons in a sensory-deprived wasteland for 30 days on zero sleep and zero food. The spiritual caloric deficit alone should have dissolved his soul. But eventually, the battlefield fundamentally changes. Red lightning strikes the black earth, completely shattering the plateau he's fighting on. A massive pillar of black flame erupts toward the azure sky, and from that abyssal pit rises a colossal, 10-story tall black dragon.
The visual design of this creature is meant to be overwhelming. It is a physical manifestation of terminal elemental power. Polished obsidian skin that absorbs the dim light, razor-sharp scales, and claws the size of the acid worms he faced in the Maznia Desert.
Zeryl Homrasul's first instinct is pure tactical retreat. He tries to run, attempting to gain some distance to assess the threat, but the dragon chases him, relentlessly bombarding the terrain with black fireballs that silently dissolve everything they touch. He's eventually cornered near the crumbling edge of the abyss.
Nowhere left to run.
Nowhere. But when he finally turns around, forced to face the beast, he notices a detail that completely reframes the entire nature of the battle. He looks up at the dragon's massive chest, and etched directly into its obsidian scales is his exact family crest.
But the crest is corrupted. The text notes that instead of the pure, deep crystal blue of his family's noble lineage, the crest on the dragon's chest is a dark, reddish, jagged crystal. It is visibly infected by the darkness of the realm.
The reveal here is just staggering. Gentrics is completely explicit about this in the text. The dragon is not a separate generic monster that Laduto summoned from some dark bestiary.
Not at all.
It is explicitly Zeryl Homrasul's own dark mirror self. It is a literal biological manifestation of a possible future where he failed to harmonize with the elements. A future where his grief and vengeance completely consumed his identity, mutating him until he lost to the darkness entirely.
I want to dive into the psychological weight of this confrontation because it subverts classical fantasy tropes brilliantly.
Oh, please do.
In a standard hero's journey, the protagonist fights a dragon to save a kingdom, rescue a captive, or claim a hoard of gold. It is an external conflict against a mindless force of nature. But here, the mythic beast is deeply internalized.
He is fighting his own unprocessed trauma.
Exactly. The dragon represents the terrifying reality that his trauma, the very thing that has been fueling his void weapon and keeping him alive up to this point, has a terminal velocity. If he doesn't process his grief, it will mutate him into an entity of pure, destructive desolation.
It's like being forced into a gladiator arena to fight a physical manifestation of your absolute worst intrusive thoughts. Imagine having to look at a 10-story-tall version of your absolute worst possible future self.
I shudder.
A self that has completely given up on hope, abandoned all morality, and is fueled entirely by spite and black flame. And just to twist the knife, Laduto reappears on the edge of the battlefield to issue the most chilling ultimatum imaginable. He points at the dragon and tells him, defeat it or become it.
The stakes are no longer just survival, they are identity retention. If he loses, he doesn't just die. He merges with the dragon, taking its place in the timeline to bring about more death and destruction.
And for 3 weeks, he is losing. Badly. The dragon is simply too powerful. His unrefined void blasts are splashing uselessly against the obsidian scales. He retreats behind a shattered boulder, completely exhausted, his spirit battered. He desperately searches his left hand for the fire emblem, hoping for some spark of elemental help, but the mark is gone.
It's total despair.
He was at the absolute end of his rope. And then, once again, the memory of his mother pierces the despair. He remembers her telling him to trust the elementals, promising that they will never leave him unprotected if he approaches them with belief.
We see the mechanism of faith overriding the mechanism of fear again. Just like in the Volcano, when he stops operating from a place of panic, the environment, or in this case, his internal elemental capacity, responds.
He takes a breath. He relaxes his spiritual posture. He steps out from behind the boulder with a newly found, quiet determination. The dragon sees him and immediately unleashes a massive, inescapable wall of black flames. Laduto literally laughs out loud, assuming Zeryl Homrasul has just committed suicide by stepping into the open.
Right.
But when the black smoke clears, he is still standing there. He's entirely enclosed in a dark red and black aura. He leaps into the air, dodging the next strike, and for the very first time in the series, he actively fuses his Void Blast with the fire element.
Let's break down the mechanics of this fusion because it is the crux of his entire character development.
Absolutely.
He doesn't defeat the darkness by throwing more raw darkness at it. The raw void energy was insufficient to defeat the corrupted manifestation of his own trauma. To cut through the despair, he had to rely on the fire element, the very thing he was in the realm of the dead to earn.
It's a brilliant paradox. It's like trying to power a high-beam flashlight using a black hole as the battery. Fire needs to consume oxygen and expand outward. The void needs to consume everything and collapse inward. He is forcing a constant state of mutually assured destruction in the palm of his hand and using the tension between those two forces as a weapon.
It represents a monumental step in his internal harmonization. He didn't reject his darkness or pretend his trauma didn't exist. He used the passion and the heat of the fire to purify it, refining the void into something focused and directional rather than a consumptive cloud. He actively prevented his own psychological mutation.
He blasts the dragon precisely in the chest with this new, highly unstable fused attack. The sheer kinetic force knocks the 10-story beast backward, pinning it against the ground. Zeryl Homrasul lands directly on the dragon's chest. He places his hand right on the corrupted reddish crest and speaks this incantation. Flames of nullity heed my call and disperse this abomination that desolates the great flame. A massive pillar of black and red fire erupts from his arm, plunging into the beast, and the dragon completely dissolves into ash. His dark future is erased. And the second the dragon vanishes, the fire emblem immediately reappears, glowing on his hand.
The trophy is back, and he has proved he won't be corrupted by his own grief.
But, true to the punishing nature of this universe, dissolving his dark future doesn't earn him a single moment of rest. The narrative immediately rips the floor out from under him again. The very second the dragon dissolves, a massive explosion from an unknown direction violently knocks him into the air, over the cliff's edge, which drops us seamlessly into our fourth and final section of the deep dive, the illusion, the Voidwalker, and the twin blades.
The pacing here is genuinely relentless. There is zero decompression time between the dragon fight and the final trial for the scythe.
None at all. He is blown backward, and he believes he's been knocked entirely off the plateau. He is falling endlessly into the suffocating darkness of the Krankite abyss. And as he's falling, experiencing this intense sensory deprivation, he starts reflecting on his journey. He almost finds a strange, morbid comfort in the idea of failing.
Yeah, that part was dark.
He thinks that if he hits the bottom and dies, he might finally reunite with his murdered family and whatever comes next.
It's the siren song of the void, the temptation to just let go and cease the struggle.
But then his mind flashes to King Pochi Kuvarnese. He remembers that the tyrant is still out there in the physical world, slaughtering innocents, expanding his empire. And Zeryl Homrasul, flat out, refuses to die while the king still breathes. His resolve reignites, and a bright red aura of crimson flames envelops his falling body, illuminating the darkness like a supernova.
Notice the shift in the elemental response here.
Right.
The fire element is now actively responding to his sheer will to protect others and see justice done, rather than just reacting to his localized desire for vengeance or self-preservation.
But as he's falling, shining brightly in the dark, he realizes a terrifying spatial incongruity. He can see the bottom of the abyss approaching, but he can't see Laduto's scythe, the object he is supposed to retrieve to win the wager. And suddenly, out of nowhere, he is violently slashed across the back by an unseen attacker.
It's just out of the shadows.
It's a shadowy, blurry figure darting in and out of the peripheral darkness, cutting his legs, slicing his arms, bleeding him out while he is completely vulnerable in midair.
It's an attack specifically designed to induce panic. The attacker is trying to force him back into a state of reactive, thoughtless survival where he abandons the harmony he just achieved.
But after taking a few severe hits, Zeryl Homrasul realizes the physics of his situation don't make sense. He acts on pure instinct. He ignites a massive ring of fire that expands outward in a 360-degree radius to protect himself. And the sudden, intense light of that fire reveals a massive sensory illusion. The light hits the ground immediately below his feet.
He's not falling.
He realizes he is no longer falling. In fact, he never was. He's been standing on the solid floor at the bottom of the abyss the entire time. The sensation of falling was completely an illusion of darkness meant to disorient him.
It's a brilliant use of the environment by the author. The trial of deception wasn't just the dragon masquerading as a monster. It was the very physics of the space he believed he was occupying.
And the unseen attacker darting through the shadows. It's Laduto. The Reaper steps forward, his deception revealed, holding the massive scythe. And he delivers a line that gave me absolute chills. He points the weapon and says, "Now die and be swallowed up by darkness." Voidwalker.
There it is, the formal anointing.
It is a massive structural lore moment. This is the very first time in the entire text that the Void power gets an actual formal title. Before this exact sentence, it was just the unidentified weapon, or the dark aura, or the parasite. But Laduto, a cosmic keeper of elements, explicitly names him the Voidwalker. It canonizes his identity within the universe's elemental framework.
It elevates him from a traumatized kid surviving on borrowed power to an ordained master of a planetary force. But Laduto isn't just saying it as a respectful observation. He says it as a challenge to the death.
Right.
He intends to kill the newly minted Voidwalker, consume his soul, and take the fire element for himself.
Which kicks off an absolute war at the bottom of the abyss. They duel intensely. Time is completely meaningless down here. Zeryl Homrasul is taking heavy damage from the scythe. And in a moment of absolute desperation, as Laduto brings the heavy blade down for a decapitating killing blow, Zeryl Homrasul summons his incomplete phantom fire sword to block it. And the very microsecond those two weapons clash, time completely stops.
A metaphysical pause inside a metaphysical realm. His consciousness is separated once again, layered even deeper.
He is thrown into this temporary suspended space of pure white and red consciousness. And waiting for him in this suspended space is the massive acid worm spirit from the Masnia Desert. It is the true, ancient, spiritual form of the fire relic.
The guardian who originally gave him the dark half of the blade back in part 2. It has been dormant inside his soul, quietly waiting for him to prove his spiritual durability. And defeating the dragon, facing the Reaper, piercing the illusion of the fall, all of it cumulatively proved he is finally capable of bearing the full thermodynamic weight of the fire element.
The spirit worm acts as the ultimate mechanical mentor here. It doesn't just give him a pep talk. It teaches him the exact, precise mechanics required to activate the weapon's true physical form. It isn't just swinging a sword and hoping it cuts. The worm explains the internal circuitry.
The specific steps.
He has to actively channel the flame within himself, push it into the manifested blade, grab the hilt with both hands, physically pull the twin hilts apart, and speak a highly specific incantation.
Be thou burned by the flames of desolation and destruction.
Yes. The spirit worm vanishes, and time instantly snaps back to reality. Zeryl Homrasul is staring down the edge of the Reaper's scythe, but this time he executes the mechanics perfectly. He ignites the fire within his core. His left hand is entirely consumed in an azure blue flame. He grabs the hilt, pulls it apart with a metallic shriek, and with a blinding concussive flash of light, the weapon is complete. He is holding the twin blades of desolation. They are described as streamlined with pure flame and glowing with azure-colored blades.
I want to highlight the visual detail of the azure flame because it connects beautifully to the world building from part 1.
Oh, please do.
Remember that the Azure River in the volcanic province of Asnea was the only source of sweet, nurturing, drinkable life in an otherwise completely hostile environment. By his flame manifesting as azure, it signals mechanically that his fire is no longer the corrupted, lava-like, rolling fire of the Calablaze that killed his parents. His fire is pure, harmonized, and life-affirming.
That is a phenomenal connection. It proves the corruption has been filtered out.
Yeah.
And he uses this purified fire flawlessly. He doesn't just wildly slash at Laduto, he commands the spatial reality of the battlefield. With a single motion of the twin blades, he creates 4 massive pillars of purifying azure flame, trapping the Reaper completely on all 4 sides. The intense heat threatens to vaporize the shadows. It is total, undeniable checkmate.
And Laduto, recognizing the absolute mastery of both the void and the purified flame, formally concedes the fight. He lowers his scythe, he accepts his defeat and the loss of the wager. But as the realm begins to dissolve, he leaves Zeryl Homrasul with one final, deeply unsettling warning. He looks at him through the flames and says, "Should hatred and anger consume you, the darkness shall take over thee forever."
A chilling caveat to his victory. The azure flames consume the entire abyss, washing the realm in white light. The next time Zeryl Homrasul opens his eyes, he is back in his physical body. He's sitting on the stone ledge at the bottom of the Cartier volcano.
Safe and sound.
Safe and sound. But the environment has completely changed. The lava is entirely gone. The magma pool is drained. The volcano is inactive, dry, and cool to the touch. His physical body is perfectly preserved. But the undeniable physical proof of everything that just happened in the metaphysical realm is burned onto his left hand. The fire symbol has returned to his skin, but it is now permanently, physically fused with a new void or dark symbol. Together they form a single intricate donut-shaped ring mark.
And this specific physical mark brings us to the core thematic question of this entire deep dive. The discussion angle we really need to interrogate before we wrap up.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Zeryl Homrasul just earned formal, recognized mastery over both the fire element and the void element, and he did it at the exact same time inside the exact same trial.
He now permanently holds the thermodynamic volatility of fire and the spatial consumptive absence of the void, wedded together in one biological host.
We have to break down what this means for the structural integrity of the universe of Elebria. The elemental relics, the fire, the water, the earth, were designed by the ancients to be distinct, separate pressure valves regulating the planet. Keeping the forces apart was the mechanism that maintained balance.
So I have to debate you on this outcome, because I look at this fused mark on his hand, and I think he is breaking the lore. He is cheating the system.
Really?
Yeah. Does earning both of these simultaneously completely undercut the strict light versus dark binary that the Guardian Worm set up back in Part 2? The worm explicitly said light corrupts and darkness cleanses. It strongly implied a necessary quarantine-like separation to keep the planet from tearing itself apart. But now, they are fused together in one host. Is this simultaneous mastery of conflicting elemental arts exactly the contradiction and deceit that the Volcano was warning him about in the very beginning of the trial? By fusing them, is he bypassing the natural pressure valves of the planet?
See, I have to disagree with you there. I don't think he is breaking the lore. I think he is fulfilling a lost evolutionary piece of it.
Oh, interesting.
The separation of the elements, that quarantine you mentioned, might not have been a natural, optimized state. It might have been a temporary safety measure, a crutch for a planetary system that lacked a host capable of enduring the fusion.
But if the planet requires the elements to be compartmentalized to survive, fusing two massive planetary load-bearing pillars within a single traumatized human vessel is inherently dangerous. It's like installing a massive experimental turbocharger on an engine, but using a highly corrosive alien coolant to keep it from exploding. It might run beautifully for a mile, or it might blow the entire vehicle to pieces.
But that tension is the point of the Voidwalker title. By relying on the void to temper the fire, he isn't circumventing the limits of the flame, he is enforcing them internally. He has centralized the planetary conflict inside his own soul. The physical mark on his hand, the fused ring, is undeniable proof that the localized physics of his reality have permanently shifted to accommodate him.
Wow.
He is no longer just a participant in the elemental ecosystem, he is an anomaly that the ecosystem must now adapt to.
He is a walking, breathing paradox. And that sets the stage for absolutely everything that comes next. The power scaling has completely exploded. He isn't just a scared kid with a rusty knife and a shadowy parasite anymore. He is the anointed Voidwalker, wielding the purified twin blades of desolation.
But the psychological tension holding that power together is coiled tighter than ever.
It really is. Which leads me to a final provocative thought I want to leave with you, our listener, today. Something to really chew on as you process the massive lore drops we've just uncovered.
The lingering implications of Laduto's final warning in the abyss.
Precisely. Laduto specifically warned that if hatred ever consumes him, the darkness will take over forever. The fusion will break, and he will become that 10-story black dragon. But let's look at the foundational architecture of Zeryl Homrasul's entire journey so far. His quest to gather these relics, his motivation to cross the blistering Maznia Desert, his willingness to endure the Magma Maze and wager his soul, it's all fundamentally built on a bedrock foundation of hatred and revenge against King Pucci, Q of Arnis for the Calablaze.
His engine is fueled by the exact emotion the Reaper warned will destroy him.
So here is the question you need to explore on your own. If his ultimate overarching goal is driven by hatred, is his eventual victory against the king destined to be the very catalyst that turns him into the corrupted dragon he just defeated? Can you build a stable house of purified azure flame on a foundation of dark vengeance? Or is the Voidwalker simply a cosmic disaster waiting to happen?
It forces us to ask if the pursuit to systemic justice can ever be entirely divorced from the poison of personal revenge.
It is a terrifying structural question to leave you with, but a necessary one given the stakes. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly intense exploration of Part 3. You have been a fantastic third chair at the table today, and we hope you enjoyed unpacking the gears of this universe with us.
The elemental mechanics of Elebria are only getting more complex, and the consequences of wielding them are becoming increasingly cosmic.
So take a breath, get a glass of water, and get ready. because next time we are stepping out of the inactive Cartier volcano and directly into Part 4, the explosive final part of Book 1 of the Elementalist. You will not want to miss how the Voidwalker tests his new fused power in the open world.
Until then, keep questioning the mechanics and keep exploring the lore.
We will see you next time on the Gentrics Multiverse podcast.